Hello and welcome back to Bicyclelegs Talks Music and another panel. And can you please welcome back to the channel three absolutely wonderful guests? I have John the Music Nut from the Music Nut channel. I have Tom Curlis from Curlis Mania, and I have Davey Cretin from Cretin Classics. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having
having
us.
us. Yeah.
And today we've got an interesting topic, I think. We're going to be talking about albums that are self-titled but aren't this artist's debut album. So a lot of the time, an artist, when they've put their first album out, it'll be self-titled. But sometimes an artist will do a self-titled album later down the track. And it may not even necessarily be the first time they've done a self-titled album, as I think we'll see as we go along with our various picks. So we're talking about albums here that are our favorites in this category, or just ones that we think are particularly notable or interesting. Unfortunately, Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation was supposed to be joining us for this show. He had to pull out at the last minute because of work commitments. I do, however, have his three picks, so I will be able to include those as we go along. So I'm going to just go around as I see it, and we'll choose one each, and we'll just go around till we've done our three. And I'm going to start off with John the Music Nut. John, what is your first self-titled album that is not a debut album?
Okay, thank you, Daniel. My first one was released in 1968, and this was by far this band's biggest record, and they're still out there in one formation. Over maybe 80 members have passed through this band. This is Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and their second self-titled album. Their first album was Child is Father to the Man. And then once there you go. So after they released that album, Al Cooper and two other members left. They brought in David Clayton Thomas on vocals, brought in a few more members, and they put out this album, which would give them three number two hits in the United States. And a lot of the songs on here are covers. Smiling Faces was a Traffic song. And When I Die was a Laura Nyro song that was a number two hit. God Bless the Child was an old Billie Holiday song. You Made Me So Very Happy is also a cover song. That was the first of the three number two hits on here. And Spinning Wheel was a number two hit as well. That one David Clayton Thomas wrote. Other great songs on here, Sometimes in Winter, I think is very elegant, wonderful song. Blues Part Two, this is more of a jam where you got a sax solo, bass solo, drum solo on here. You got little snippets of Spoonful and Sunshine of Your Love on here, most notably done by Cream Spoonful, but Willie Dixon wrote it. More and More is another great track on here. It's bookended by Variations on a Theme by Eric Satie. And after the first part of that, the first track, it goes in this really psychedelic part where if you're listening to this in headphones, it's actually pretty cool. And then it goes right into Smiling Phases or Faces. It's spelled Faces. So that's my first one, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, self-titled second album from 1968.
Yeah, no, excellent choice. As I say, I had it in
Thank you.
my list as well. Interesting fact, this album was produced by James William Guercio, who would, of course, become a lot more famous for producing the first 11 Chicago albums.
Mhm.
And apparently, Chicago were a bit miffed that he was producing this album before their first album because they were like, oh man, it's another band with horns, you know. But basically, James William Guercio produced the Blood, Sweat, and Tears album in order to finance what would become Chicago Transit Authority. So I just thought that
Exactly.
was an interesting little sort of tidbit, as it were, about this
Mhm.
album. And of course, it won Grammys and stuff as well. It was a absolutely huge album, and I love it to death. I think it's absolutely wonderful. So yeah, absolutely great choice there, John.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom, what is your first pick?
Okay, well, John had mentioned Traffic, so that is my first pick, is the 1968 album by Traffic, which was just called Traffic, right after their debut, Dear Mr. Fantasy. And I've always had a soft spot for this record. I just think it's a great, it's the classic four-piece Traffic, which is my favorite lineup of the band, with Dave Mason in the lineup. Because with Dave Mason, he's contributing about half the songs, and I think it's kind of a Traffic had sort of a tumultuous history from the get-go because they did Dear Mr. Fantasy, and then literally Dave Mason left right after that album was released, or they pushed him out. I'm not sure which. And then they toured, and then they came back to make the second record and realized they were short of songs. This is what I understand. And then they called Dave Mason and said, "Oh, do you want to come back to the band? Do you have some songs for us?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've got some songs. Sure, I'll come back to the band." And sure enough, one of his songs in his bag was "Feeling All Right," which became an absolute classic when done by Joe Cocker and many others. It's been covered a ton. Um, I'm sure we used to call that mailbox money. I'm sure he gets a lot of mailbox money from the covers of that song alone. But I think it's a really excellent record. I think the 1967 debut, Dear Mr. Fantasy, is very psychedelia, summer of love, psychedelia kind of vibe, which I really enjoy. I think that's a great record. It's got sitar on it, and it's got, I mean, Hole in My Shoe was the single, and it's very, that's like almost sounds like a Beatles track or something when you listen to it, and it's, I love the psychedelia vibe of that first record, but this one is more 1968, where the Beatles were going back to the White Album, and the Stones were going back to Beggar's Banquet, and everyone was going back to the rootsy rock again. And so this is a little more of that feeling where it's a little more rootsy. Things like Who Knows What Tomorrow May Bring is almost like a soul track. Pearly Queen is a great classic track. You Can All Join In. I love that. I remember hearing that on a compilation, or not a compilation, a cassette someone had made, and they made like a mixed cassette. We should do that back in the day. And I didn't know, I'd heard the song and I go, "Oh, I love that song," but I didn't know who it was. I was like, "I gotta find out who that is." And it's one of back in the day, you had to figure it out. So I finally figured it out. It was Traffic, and I loved it, and I bought the record right away. Um, 40,000 Headmen, No Time to Live, Means to an End. I mean, I just think this album is just packed with great songs, and one of my faves. And it's, this is my original copy. It's still in, as Bicycle Legs would say, it's still in pretty good nick, actually. So there you go.
No, excellent choice. Now, I didn't initially think of that album, and I'll tell you why. Because here in Australia, those first few Traffic albums got renamed. So, of course, that first Traffic album was Dear Mr. Fantasy, or just Mr. Fantasy, sorry. And then
Right.
but in the US, it was released with a slightly different track list, and it was called Heaven Is in Your Mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. In Australia, for some reason, when that first Traffic album came out, they called it Traffic.
Oh, okay.
And then, get this, and it had the Mr. Fantasy track listing, right? It
Hmm.
then got re-released with the Heaven Is in Your Mind track listing and with the Heaven Is in Your Mind cover, but they called it Mr. Fantasy.
Hmm.
What a mess.
Yeah. And so
Wow.
then when the second album came out, because they'd already called the first one Traffic here, they had to call it Traffic 2.
Oh,
So
got it. Got it. All right.
yeah. So it's an absolute schmozzle, those early Traffic releases here in Australia. So yeah, it's really confusing. But I mean, I love Traffic. I think they were a great band, and I love the later stuff as well as the early stuff. It's all like they're kind of two different bands in a lot of ways. But
Yes. Yeah.
but I love it all, and I definitely need to do some Traffic content here on the channel. So thank you, Tom, for picking that, and for also reminding me that I need to do a Traffic show of some sort or another here on Bicycle Legs Talks Music. So thank you.
Yep.
All right, Davey, what is your first self-titled album that is not a debut album?
Okay, first of all, about Dave Mason, it was in the 1990s. I don't remember the date exactly. I saw Dave Mason play an acoustic show with another guitar player. They were both on acoustic guitars. The other guy was singing backing vocals. They opened up, and I'm pretty sure this was the show. The late comedian Richard Lewis from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Dave Mason was his opening act. And Dave Mason and his partner, they were great. Excellent way to open a show. It's kind of weird seeing an acoustic rock show and then a stand-up comedian, and he had his typical notes on the stage on a stool, and Richard Lewis was referring to them. That was in the 90s. The reason I bring that up, besides the great Tom Curlis bringing it up, is because my choice is from the 90s. So we're going from the 60s to the 90s here. It's their second album, also called the Blue Album, and no, it's not Weezer. This just celebrated its 30th anniversary last week on Atlantic Records, 46 minutes long. Ed Roland and Collective Soul, their second album. Now, John does a lot of, great minds think alike. John does a lot of 90s content, and I'm surprised he hasn't done them on his channel yet, but I'm sure he's going to. So this record hit number 23 in America, 3 times platinum in America. 3 million plus albums sold. In Bicyclelegs' neck of the woods in Australia, it hit number 23 also on the charts, went gold. So it sold 35,000 plus copies. New Zealand, right by Bicyclelegs, it went number 1, went platinum, 15,000 copies sold. Canada, number 4, 8 times platinum, 800,000 copies sold. This was produced by Ed Roland, the band leader and main songwriter, and Matt Cierletic, if I'm pronouncing his name right. They had 5 singles from this album, and I'll go through the chart placings as fast as I can. In America, Gel, the first single, hit 49. December hit 20. The third single, Smashing Young Man, hit number 8 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock chart. The World I Know was a number 19 hit. And the 5th single, Where the River Flows, hit number 1 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock chart. 4 of the songs charted in Australia. Gel was 52, December 97. Smashing Young Man didn't chart. The World I Know, number 41. Where the River Flows, 99. Just made it onto the top 100 in Australia. And besides the 5 singles, which are great, the song Simpled and the song Untitled are really good songs. Everyone knows the song Shine from this band. That's from their debut album. What's it called, John? Hints, Allegations, and Things Better Left Unsaid, I think.
Correct.
Nice. I remember that. That I didn't have in my notes. And this is a really good album. The thing about Collective Soul, they always had really catchy, good guitar riffs. It's all about the riff and just the melody of the song. They have great melodies, really good backing vocals. And I liked Ed Roland as a lead singer. And all their Atlantic albums, that's my favorite period of the band. And eventually I was going to do a show on them on Cretin Classics, but I'm sure John's going to beat me to the punch there. So my first band, Collective Soul.
Nice.
Do you remember hearing them on the radio in Australia, Bicyclelegs?
Yeah, I think that first album that you were talking about, it's got like the red cover and like the cartoon
red and yellow
guy yelling or something. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that being sort of the album that really sort of did well here. And I'm trying to remember what the hit single off that album was, but
Shine.
Yeah. So
Tom, you could sing it for us.
Isn't that oh, baby, let your light shine down? Yeah,
that's it.
Like that's all I remember.
There you go.
No, that's the hook line. That's the chorus. Yeah. That's it.
No,
actually, the hook is yeah, that's
true.
Because when you go to see them and they play that part, the whole crowd yells "yeah" during that part.
Yeah, that's true.
I never saw them live, unfortunately, but I'm sure they put on a great show.
They're great live, still.
Yeah,
excellent.
All right. Well, my first choice is an album that a lot of people, I think, assume is this artist's debut album, but it's actually not. It's actually his second album. It's from 1976. I'm getting that right. Yes, 1976. and it is the self-titled album by Warren Zevon. Now, a lot of people think this is his first album, but it's not. He actually did an album all the way back in 1969 called Wanted Dead or Alive. And a lot of people think it's a terrible album. I actually don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's up to the standard of what he would do later on, but I still think it's not a bad album. But this, I mean, this really put Warren Zevon's name on the map. You know, it wasn't a huge seller, but you know, people like Linda Ronstadt started covering his songs, and that really sort of made him more of a household name. And there's a couple of songs on here that she covered that, you know, made them much bigger. I'm thinking of Poor Pitiful Me and Muhammad's Radio. But you've also got the wonderful Frank and Jesse James. You've got Backs Turned Down the Path. Mama Couldn't Be Persuaded. Join Me in LA is a really sort of witty song about sort of the LA scene and all that sort of thing. Desperados Under the Eaves is another really great song. You know, Warren Zevon, he kind of came from the tradition in Los Angeles of your Jackson Browns and your Eagles and your all that sort of thing. But he was kind of a little bit apart from that too, because there was a lot of more of a wry, dark humor in his lyrics. I always loved his voice and his delivery. And yeah, but this is a really good self-titled album. And as I say, not his debut, actually his second album. So Warren Zevon self-titled is my first pick. Just as a little bit of a teaser, I won't say with whom and I won't say the topic, but next month there will be some more Warren Zevon content on this channel. So watch out for that. And before we move back to John, I will just share one of Peter Kerr's picks, and it is the self-titled album by Australian band UMI. It's actually their ninth album, so it took them all the way till their ninth album to do a self-titled. But yeah, I mean, UMI, it's sort of garage rock, it's alternative rock, that sort of thing. Peter would explain it a lot better than I would, but it's definitely worth checking out. Tim Rogers, the lead singer of UMI, is a bit of an Australian legend as far as the Australian music scene is concerned. So yeah, absolutely a great pick there from Peter as well. So all right, John, what is your second self-titled album that's not a debut?
Okay, let's see if Davey borrows one from me now, because this is from the 90s. This was released in 1992. This is their self-titled fourth album. This trio that Grant and Rand Kelly recently spoke about on Grant's Rock Warehouse. I'm talking about King's X and their self-titled fourth album.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that one.
All right.
I thought you'd be all over that. Now, this came out after Faith, Hope, Love, which was more of a direction into pop music. There were a lot of songs on there that rock, but there was more emphasis on their Beatles-esque harmonies on there. And you could tell that they were really trying to reach for the charts on there, and it didn't, but it's a great album. This album, they went back to being a little heavier, a little more progressive. The World Around Me is a wonderful opener. This has been in their set list for many years. Prisoner is a fantastic track. Lost in Germany was their second single. The harmonies on that are wonderful. First single was Black Flag. Black Flag was a great song. You got a nice bridge on that one as well. Chariot Song, Ooh Song, those are more in the progressive vein. Not Just for the Dead has great call and response vocals between Ty Tabor and Doug Pinnick. Dream in My Life, that's a lot more of a sunny psychedelic song there with Ty's vocals on there. Very dreamy. Silent Wind's wonderful. Not Just for the Dead, Big Picture. Very good album. I don't think it gets spoken about enough when we talk about the great albums by King's X, but that's mine. My second choice, the self-titled fourth album from 1992.
Nice.
Good call.
King's
Thank
X are
you.
one of those bands that I know about and I know that I'd really, really enjoy, but I just haven't gone down the rabbit hole just yet. So definitely something I need to get into and check out because from the way everybody describes them, they sound like the sort of band that would be right up my alley. So I'll definitely have to check that out. Thank you, John. That was a really,
You're
really good
welcome.
choice. Did you have anything to add to that, Davey?
No, he said it very well. It's a great
Thanks.
album. I saw that tour.
Excellent. All right, Tom, what is your second self-titled album that's not a debut?
Okay. Well, first I wanted to say that yeah, King's X is one of those bands that just never really got its due. It's like, and they should have made. It's one of those bands you're like, they should have made it so much bigger. I don't know why they didn't. It's one of those. But anyway, my second pick, I I couldn't resist this. I had to put it in my list because it's just a sentimental favorite for me, and that is 1983's Genesis self-titled. Um, I mean, anybody who knows me knows I'm a massive Genesis fan, and I was 14 when this came out, and I was waiting for it to come out because I loved Abacab. I loved that album to death, and I bought Three Sides Live, and I was kind of waiting for the next Genesis record. And I think I had to rake leaves to make enough money to go to the record store and buy this album. Um, and I think I bought this. This is an interesting twofer, right? I bought two records that day. I bought this one and I bought Uh-huh by John Cougar Mellencamp. So it's kind of a weird
Nice.
twofer. But yeah, but anyway, but this one stayed with me and I mean I saw the video for Mama and I was sold immediately. I thought that was such a cool song. And and for a single, I thought it was very interesting. So it's their 12th record. I mean, it was released October 3rd, 1983. Um, it was the first album recorded at their own studio. So basically, this whole album was like they had the luxury of just going into their own studio and just jamming. So they went in with no material, basically. They all just kind of brought little ideas and they would just jam because they could. They were at this point they were doing very well and they had enough money to be able to do this. And they had Hugh Padgham as an engineer, which was a very talented engineer, just sitting there, just waiting for them to record ideas, essentially. And I think it worked brilliantly. And I think the first side, especially with um, Imama, That's All, Home by the Sea, Second Home by the Sea. I mean, I love the Home by the Seas. Um, I would say the only thing that really, the one song to me, there's always like that one track, you're like, oh, that could have maybe bringing it down a little is the Illegal Alien it's okay. It's like that, yeah, it's kind of like Who Done It on Abacab. You're like, come on, this one song is like bringing the whole album down a little bit. But but anyway, I did see this tour when my first real concert. I went and saw Madison Square Garden. I saw them, and it was like the best. It was amazing. I just loved it. So I became even a bigger fan after that. So this album just has a special place in my heart. I also love the track Silver Rainbow, and then the last track, It's Gonna Get Better, I think is a classic as well. So, some people love the early Genesis, the flutes and boots, Peter Gabriel, everyone, the heavy progressive rock, Supper's Ready, totally get that. But then they'll say like, oh, I just don't like the Phil Collins 80s era. I love it all. So this album especially is I think it's very good. So I had to put it on my list.
Yeah, no, excellent choice. Side one of that record in particular, I think, stands up with some of the best stuff that that band ever did.
Mhm.
The Home by the Sea suite, the two tracks together. I mean, people say that they weren't a prog band anymore in the 80s. Go and listen to the Home by the Sea suite and tell me they weren't a progressive rock band. Because,
Exactly.
I mean, it's just great. And yeah, I agree. Illegal Alien, especially in this day and age, is cringeworthy with
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
the
didn't age
horrible.
well.
No,
No.
the horrible fake accent and the film clip with them with the sombreros and the big mustaches and
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
it's
it's bad.
terrible.
It's bad.
Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, really good album. And those two tracks you mentioned on side two, I think are really they don't get enough due. Silver Rainbow and It's Gonna Get Better. I think they're really,
Yep.
really good songs. So probably the only other thing on side two I think is okay but not great is Taking It All Too Hard. It's like it's a
Yeah.
decent little ballad, but that's
I
about
love
all.
that song.
Oh, fair enough.
I think it's
There
a
you go.
great melody. That's just me.
Yeah. All right, Davey, what is your second pick?
Okay. I'm going to hop on what Tom said, talking about Genesis. Bicycle Legs was on my channel a few months ago on Cretin Classics, and we listed our top 12 tunes by Genesis. So if you're a big Genesis fan, check that out. Moving on to my pick, I'm going to go to the late 80s. And this is a band that I think, well, maybe 2 out of 3 of you have it. It came out February 28th of 1989, so it's just celebrated its 36th anniversary. It's by two singer-songwriters, Amy Ray and Emily Sailors, better known as the Indigo Girls. Did you have it
Yeah.
on your list, John?
I did not. I don't own that
Ooh.
album, but I know I've seen them. They're great.
Nice. I think I saw them too on the Lilith Fair tour many, many moons ago in the 90s. It's a 44-minute record on Epic Records produced by Scott Litt, known for producing REM and many other bands. This is their second LP, self-titled, hit number 22 in the States. And since then, I think in 1997, it was certified double platinum. It sold over 2 million copies in the States. In Australia, Bicycle Legs, it hit number 64 on the charts. Are you familiar with it?
Little bit, little bit.
Okay. There were 2 singles released, Closer to Fine, which is the big hit, which hit number 52 in the States. On the alternative chart, it hit number 26, Canada number 53, and in Australia, it hit number 57. The second single, which had no chart action, was called Tried to Be True, featuring all 3 members of REM who aren't named Michael Stipe on the instruments. And Michael Stipe does appear on the record, probably through Scott Litt. I'm sure that's how Scott Litt, the Indigo Girls, and REM, they're all from the same area down south in Atlanta. Michael Stipe sings on probably my favorite song on the record called Kid Fears, which is an amazing song. And the way he sings, I think it's with Amy on that song because she wrote that song. Excellent duet. Kid Fears is a great song. And the band Hot House Flowers, if you guys remember them, an Irish Celtic rock band from the 80s and 90s, still going today. Their backing vocals and instrumentation all over the big single, Closer to Fine. And they've been around since 85, it says here in my notes. So a band that charted in Australia and America, that's my second choice, an oddball choice. And I heard it in the record store years ago. And I said, wow, these ladies could sing. Great voices, great harmonies together, and just adding REM and Hot House Flowers to the mix. Excellent album. Indigo Girls' second album, self-titled from 89, my second choice.
Excellent choice too. And just to seeing as we're linking everything to everything else on this show, because I think it's fun, you talked about the song that has the 3 members of REM that are not called Michael Stipe. Well, those same 3 REM members did an album with Warren Zevon called Love Gods, and it is an absolutely fabulous album.
Oh, we used to play that all the time. They covered Raspberry Beret by Prince on there.
Yeah.
That was the radio hit.
Yeah, that got a lot of airplay here in Australia too. So
Same here.
So my second pick, I actually had a few that I could have chosen from here because this artist's first 4 albums are all self-titled. I went with the 4th one, which might be a bit controversial because in North America it actually does have a name, but everywhere else in the world it doesn't. And I am, of course, talking about Peter Gabriel's 4th album. This is my favorite Peter Gabriel album. I've done a Peter Gabriel studio albums ranked. I'll leave a link to that in the description. And this was my number 1. Of course, this was called Security in North America, but that was the record company's doing. That was not Peter Gabriel's doing. He wanted to just call it Peter Gabriel like he had with all his other albums. This is also where I first got into Peter Gabriel because I was 11 years old, I think, when the single Shock the Monkey came out. And I instantly loved that song. And it was a hit here, and it was a hit in Europe and stuff too. I don't know how big it was in the US, but
It was big.
it certainly, yeah, it certainly did well, around the world. But I mean, side one of this record is just some of the most intense music and some of the best use of Fairlight ever. Like it doesn't sound dated. It's used a lot for effects and for like sound effects and that sort of thing, and it's really, really great. But the rhythm of the heat, San Jacinto, I have the touch, the family and the fishing net, that whole side one just takes you on a journey. It's world music and but it's still rooted very much in sort of that early 80s sound as well. It's considering this album actually did pretty well, it's not a very commercial sounding album in a lot of ways. It's very experimental. Shock the Monkey's probably the one song that's really aimed at radio, you know. Then you get the wonderful Lay Your Hands on Me, Wallflower, and then you get the joyous Kiss of Life to end the album. It's really this big sort of rave up at the end, which is rather cool. The lyric is light-hearted as well. But it's just, yeah, I mean, from start to end, I love this album to death. I mean, I could have picked Peter Gabriel 2, I could have picked Peter Gabriel 3. Again, those aren't the actual names. They're just called, well, Peter, yeah, but that's not a one that isn't a debut, is it,
Oh,
Davey?
that's my favorite. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but of course they're not numbered. They're just called Peter Gabriel, all of them. So and they tend to get named by, well, certainly the first three do get named by what's on the front cover. So you have Car for the first one, Scratch for the second one, and Melt for the third one. So yeah, I love Peter Gabriel's solo career, and yeah, had to go with the fourth Peter Gabriel album as my second pick.
Great
And
pick.
before we move on to our final choices, this is one I didn't think of, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't think of. But thankfully, Peter Kerr comes to the rescue by picking this album. Third album by this band from 1969, if memory serves me correctly. And it is the self-titled Deep Purple album. So, of course, you had Shades of Deep Purple at first, and then you had, what's it? The Tales of
Tales of, yeah, what is it?
The
Book of
Book of
Taliesin.
Book
Taliesin.
of
Book
Taliesin.
of Taliesin, that's it. And then, yeah, the third one is just simply called Deep Purple. And then, of course, the lineup changes would come into Mark II and they would go into the stratosphere. But I've got to admit, I'm actually a bit of a fan of Deep Purple Mark One. I've got a real soft spot for Deep Purple Mark One. It's not as heavy or anything like that, but it's got these really cool sort of psychedelic things going through it, and I really, really like that. So, and I like Rod Evans as a singer too. So, yeah,
Yeah, like you said about Traffic, it's just a different band. It's a different, just look at it that way. It's a different band.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, so third and final pick, John. What have you got for us?
Thank you, Daniel. You were talking about a self-titled third album from 1969, and I'm here kicking myself because I thought you were talking about another band that you didn't mention, and I didn't bring it out. But yeah, I'm gonna work off the fly, and I'm gonna talk about it. The self-titled third album by the Velvet Underground.
Ah,
Oh, nice. Nice.
Thanks. I mean, if you didn't say that, Daniel, I thought you were going Velvet Underground there. So, but this was where I thought Lou Reed found his way as a songwriter because the first album was quite diverse and you had Nico on there singing three songs. And then with White Light, White Heat, they made something that was very loud. To me, it was the precursor to grunge, that album. This album, the self-titled third album, is very quiet and mellow. There's only one song on there that really could classify as rock, and that would be the Murder Mystery, but that's more for progressive song. This album is very mellow, like Candy Says, What Goes On is a wonderful track. Beginning to See the Light is excellent. And the end of it is very joyous. I'm Set Free is a wonderful track. Jesus is a great track. A lot of wonderful songs. Some Kind of Love is another strong track on there. And when you hear this album, it really is a prelude to what Lou would do on his own on his mellower albums. Because if you hear some of his mellower stuff, like Coney Island Baby from '76, a lot of those songs and some other songs on later albums like The Bells or Blue Mask, they have that same tone and feel that you heard on that self-titled album from 1969. And again, it was so different than what they did on those first two albums. So there would be my third pick, the self-titled third album by the Velvet Underground from 1969.
Oh, excellent choice. And I'm kicking myself for not thinking of that one either. But yeah, no, I mean, what can you say? All those Velvet Underground records with Lou Reed are just absolutely wonderful. Um, but yeah, that one's, right up there. So excellent, excellent choice.
And Pale Blue Eyes is on there too.
Yeah.
Oh
That's what
yeah, of
happens when I work
course.
without a net. And that's angelic, wonderful track.
Yeah.
Yep,
Excellent choice. All
great
right, Tom,
choice.
what is your third and final choice?
Okay, well, I had a couple different choices here to make, but I'm going to make a game time decision, and I'm going with I'm going to go with Fleetwood Mac from the album right before Rumors. Uh, and I didn't even make notes on this one, but it's so important to me that yeah, I'm like, come on, I gotta talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious why they did a self-titled on this record because this was the debut of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joining the band, of course. And it's funny because people talk about Rumors all the time, but I think this album is just as, I mean, almost just as strong if you all the way through when you play this album and you crank it up. It's like, man, I mean, things like Monday Morning. I mean, really, I think Lindsey's on fire on this record. I love. Uh, I just think he's doing some great stuff. Monday Morning, I love. I'm So Afraid. Which actually, I think I'm So Afraid was on the Buckingham Nicks album. There's a song that they redid that was from Buckingham Nicks.
Wasn't that
Oh,
Crystal?
that's
Think it was.
Crystal. You're right. Sorry, it wasn't. Yeah, I was thinking So Afraid, but you're right. It's Crystal. Um, so yeah, so they redid that on this record, and I think it's great. World Turning is another just jam. World
Oh,
Turning is almost like the chain on, on Rumors. Um, and then also Christy McVie is also just on top form on this record as well. Things like Warm Ways and Say You Love Me. Of course, Stevie does brings in Rihanna, and so it's a very strong record. And I think, to me, it's a perfect example of why they would do a self-titled late in their career because it really was sort of a rebirth of the band after many, many changes in lineup, and kind of going into the wilderness a little bit, and then they really came back strong with this one. So
Yeah. No,
Great choice.
absolutely. I mean,
excellent.
how often is it that a band, goes as many years as Fleetwood Mac had gone by this stage and has as many lineup changes as it had at this stage, and only this late in the game comes up with its definitive lineup,
right,
you know?
exactly.
Like I can't think of any other band that went through that many changes to get to their definitive lineup. And
True.
you know, absolutely, terrific album. Obviously I had it in my larger list of picks as well. So definitely not going to argue with you. I think it's a terrific choice. All right, Davey, what is your third and final self-titled album that's not a debut?
I'm going to sort of stick with the ladies. This is the eighth album by this particular band. Their debut on Capitol Records came out 40 years ago this summer, June of 1985. And I'm talking about Hearts self-titled 8th album, the big comeback album. The sisters have regrets about this album, the Wilson sisters, also joined by Howard Leese on guitar and keyboards, Mark Andes on bass, and the great Denny Carmassi on drums. They had 5 hit singles again from this album, just like Collective Soul. 5 hit singles. In America, What About Love hit 10, Never hit number 4, These Dreams number 1, Nothing at All number 10, and then If Looks Could Kill was number 54. And the first 4 charted in Australia, Daniel. 28 for What About Love, 48 for Never, 27 These Dreams, and 87 for Nothing at All. And on the first single, What About Love, Grace Slick and Mickey Thomas are singing backing vocals. So that really super high harmony is Grace Slick from The Airplane and Jefferson Starship. And I think they were brought in because Ron Nevison, the great Ron Nevison, produced this record. And he was doing a bunch of Jefferson Starship and then Starship albums at the time. In America, this hit number 1, sold 5 million copies, 5 times platinum. In Australia, it hit number 37. And in Canada, number 3 went 6 times platinum, selling 600,000 copies. So that is my final choice, the Heart album. I know it's a little overproduced. It's very pop, but there's also some really good rock songs on here and some great deep tracks. The Wolf harkens back to Old Heart with a heavy guitar sound and Anne screaming her lungs out. You get a guitar solo on the next song I'm going to mention, Nobody Home, which is a really good ballad. And Frankie Sullivan from Survivor plays the guitar solo on that song. Another good poppy upbeat song is All Eyes. So I really like this album. It's not my favorite Heart album, but I think it's a good comeback, and it gave them a whole career renaissance 10 years into their career in 1985. So my third choice is Heart.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you what year that came out. 85.
Yeah, June 85.
Nice. Actually a little surprised with those chart numbers you gave for Australia, because These Dreams and What About Love played a lot on the radio. I expected that they would be a little higher in the Australian charts than that, but there you go. And that's probably when I first really got to know Heart. I didn't get to know the 70s stuff until sort of a little later, and I was listening to classic rock radio and that sort of thing. And I'd hear things like Magic Man and Barracuda and that sort of thing. But yeah, no, good choice. Good choice.
Thanks.
My last choice, I had a few to choose from, and I've decided to go with this one. And some people might raise an eyebrow, but I think this is a terrific album. It is the 3rd solo album by this former Beatle, and that is Ringo by Ringo Starr. And I think this is a terrific album. You know, the funny thing is, by 1973, of the 4 solo Beatles, Ringo was actually the one selling the most records, and singles and albums. So, yeah, but I mean, it starts off with the incredible I'm the Greatest, written by John Lennon, you know, kind of a theme song for Ringo, and just wonderful. You get Have You Seen My Baby, which is written by Randy Newman. Love me some Randy Newman, and I think Ringo does a great job of it. Photograph, what an incredible song Photograph is. You know, written by Ringo and George, and just such a beautiful, beautiful song. Sunshine Life for Me, Sail Away Raymond, written by George Harrison, real kind of got a country folk vibe to it, which I think is really cool. Probably the only track I cringe a little bit at is You're 16, but you know, but I mean, it's an old 50s song, but you know, just the idea of, you know, singing songs about 16-year-old girls, just no. In this day and age. You get Devil Woman, written by Richard Starkey and Vinnie Poncia. Of course, Vinnie Poncia would go on to work with Kiss in the late 70s. They also co-write Oh My My, which has got a real sort of glam vibe to it, which I think is really cool. Step Lightly is a song that Ringo writes on his own, and it's just kind of charming. 6 o'clock, written by Paul and Linda. I really like that song. I know a lot of people don't, but I think it's really, really cool. And then the beautiful You and Me, Babe ends the album, written by George Harrison and Mal Evans, who was like their roadie, the Beatles roadie back in the day. So all in all, I think this, if I did a top 10 Beatles solo albums, this would be in there, no doubt. I think it's up there with some of the best things that John, Paul, or George did. Does Ringo get a lot of help from a lot of, star friends? Yeah, of course he does. But he still makes this record what it is. I think it's a wonderful album, and that is my third and final choice. And before we get into any honorable mentions, I will just mention Peter's third and final choice. I won't have an awful lot to say about this because I don't really know this album very well, but it is the fifth album by Britpop band Blur. So I think it's from 2001. Oh, there you go.
Yes, I had this in my honorable mentions. Yes.
So there you
Nice.
go. So
Yeah.
that was Peter's third pick. So yeah, so we'll go around quickly and have any honorable mentions. John, what honorable mentions did you have?
Okay, I have four here.
Hmm.
First one, probably the biggest selling of all the self-titled albums that weren't to debut. Also called the Black Album, but it's actually a self-titled album. Metallica, self-titled fifth album, which broke the band into the mainstream, gave them their first three, actually their second, third, and fourth top 40 hits in the United States. Five huge radio hits that you still hear on your classic rock stations and your hard rock stations here. This is what turned the band into a stadium band to this day. And my next one is actually this artist's second self-titled album that was not his debut. And I'm talking about Tom Rush's eighth album from 1970. This was his second self-titled album. His first one was his fourth self-titled album. This album had Driving Wheel and Drop Down Mama. They were both minor singles. They hit the top 100, but they didn't hit the top 40. Tom Rush was best known for being a wonderful interpreter for a lot of great songwriters before they made their name in the States. And one of those songwriters was Jackson Browne, and he covered These Days on this album before Jackson Browne would have a record label in America. And he also covered songs by James Taylor and Joni Mitchell before they would make it in the United States. A lot of great songs on here. Old Man Song is very somber. Lullaby is in that same vein as well. Colors of the Sun, Living in the Country is more upbeat. His version of Murray McLaughlin's Child Song is wonderful, and hard not to listen to this song and not get a tear in your eye. This is a song about someone who's leaving home and saying goodbye to his parents. So this is a very good album. I did the Davey here. I took out the covers to avoid the Claire. So yeah, so there's one. And this one's for Grant Arthur. This is Cheap Trick's second self-titled album, their 13th album from 1997. And this was, I thought, a critical comeback for them, even though their record label, Ant Records, went into bankruptcy a few weeks after it was released. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, this was their best album since maybe Dream Police are all shook up, in my opinion. There was a lot of great songs on here, a lot of great rockers here, like Baby No More, Yeah, Yeah, Wrong All Along. And then you have wonderful ballads like Shelter and All Comes Back to You, and Say Goodbye was a wonderful single. Hard to Tell was as well. So there's my third choice. My last choice is the only album by Motley Crue that does not have Vince Neil on lead vocals. It's their sixth self-titled album from 1994. This is John Corabi on vocals. This album didn't really sell, but it's aged very well. It's probably my favorite Motley Crue record next to Shout at the Devil, because here I think they got their mojo back. It didn't chart really, I mean, it charted high, but then it dropped like a stone based on a name recognition only. But there's some great songs on here like Hooligan's Holiday and Uncle Jack and Smoke the Sky and Poison Apples. A lot of great tracks on this one. So there you go. They're my honorables.
No, all good choices. I like that.
Thank
Tom,
you.
what honorable mentions did you have?
Yes, I held it up, but yes, I also had the Cheap Trick self-titled. I agree with John. This is just a killer. This is a really great comeback record. I remember when I first heard this, I was like, "Whoa, Cheap Trick sounds great again." Like there's just something about that record. It's got a lot of energy. Um, I also picked George Harrison's self-titled from '79 with Blow Away on it and Love Comes to Everyone, Not Guilty, which was a cast off from the White Album. Um, yeah, it's a very mellow record. It's very, very kind of almost easy listening at times, but really very good. If you're in the right mood for it, it's very good.
Hmm.
Um, this kind of goes along with what Bicycle Legs was talking about with the debacle, as far as just the early records being like named and renamed with the traffic. David Bowie had kind of the same thing going on where this is his second album, but it's called David Bowie. His first album was called David Bowie, but then they called this Space Oddity. So there you go. But I really like this album a lot. I think he self-titled it because he was like, this is what I want people to know. The first album was kind of a novelty-esque, kind of with the Laughing Gnome and all that. And I think he was like, let me start over again in '69 with Space Oddity. So there you go. Um, yes, and then I also had the Blur choice as well from overlapping with Peter on that one. Yeah. So
Excellent. All right, Davey, what are your honorable mentions?
Well, like John, I had also picked Metallica, the self-titled album called the Black Album. But the thing we used to do, or I did when I worked at the record store, because we played it so much and it got so much airplay, I would go to the CD player and program the 7 songs that were not the 5 hit singles. So I program Holier Than Thou, Don't Tread, Through the Never, Of Wolf and Man, The God That Failed, My Friend of Misery, and The Struggle Within. And it's about 31, 32 minutes. And it's a tight, heavy, hard, great album without all the overplayed songs. So that's a little trick for you people out there who are tired of the Black Album. Skip the singles, program the 7 deep tracks, great album. So I had Metallica. I also had Genesis, Tom's choice. Alice in Chains, third studio record, their self-titled one from '95, produced by Toby Wright, 65-minute album, had 3 singles, hit number 1 in America, number 5 in Australia, number 4 in the UK. And my last one, Sheryl Crow's second album called Sheryl Crow from 1996. 5 singles from that album in America. And it did very well on the charts. 3 times platinum here at number 6, 2 times platinum in Australia, Bicycle Legs at number 14, and number 5 in the UK, 3 times platinum. So that did very well. Those are my honorables.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. I don't have any honorables from Peter, but I do have a few myself. I don't think our good friend Davey Gallagher would forgive me if we didn't mention this album, which is The Band.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Which of course is their follow-up to Music from Big Pink. Just terrific, sort of roots rock, heartland, Americana. Even though they're like half Canadian band, they really got into the Americana, that sort of, southern kind of sounding music. I mean, this has got The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down on it. So yeah. We've talked about the Black Album, which, by the way, excellent choice. Everybody talks about Metallica and says, oh, yeah, the first 4 albums. I'm like, nah, the first 5. Because Metallica's Black Album, I think, is right up there with those first 4. It's after that I feel like they went off the rails a little bit. But
Definitely.
we've had the Black Album. I don't think anybody would forgive me if I didn't mention the White Album, which Davey and I have done a show on, so please do check that out. I'll leave a link to that in the description. This is my copy on white vinyl. So,
Nice.
um, Of course, I did have the other Peter Gabriel albums as well. That's the second Peter Gabriel album, known as Scratch, produced by Robert Fripp. It's probably one of the oddest things in Peter Gabriel's career. There's really nothing else in his whole catalog that sounds like this record, and I love that about it. But and then of course this one, Melt. I love that cover, just brilliantly done.
Yep.
Um, and any album that's got Games Without Frontiers on it, it's all right by me.
Come
So
on, gotta have it.
yeah. So those are my honorable mentions as well. So there you have it, everyone. Those are our favorite self-titled albums that are not debut albums. Please let us know in the comments, what are your favorite self-titled albums that aren't debuts? Do you agree with our choices? Do you have choices of your own? We'd love to hear from you, so please do let us know. Thank you so much to John the Music Nut, Tom Curlis, and Davey Cretin. All three of these men have wonderful YouTube channels of their own. I will leave links in the description to all of them. Please, if you're not already subscribed, go and subscribe to these three gentlemen's channels. You will not regret it. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to look at my other panel shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see some of my studio albums ranked shows, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, like Curlis Mania and Cretan Classics, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.